with someone that I just loved their focus and insights always into donor retention. So I was a fundraiser for a long time, and donor retention is such an important subject, and it's talked about a lot, but it's hard to move it from the boardroom or like the desk to actually change anything. And so I always turn to Stephen and his team's expertise at Bloomerang to really provide some insights on how organizations can do that well. So Stephen, I'm going to turn it over to you. You're welcome to share your screen if you would like, or just kind of give us some insights in over the next 25, 30 minutes into why donors stop giving and what you can do to actually fix this or attempt to fix this and really improve that. So welcome, Stephen, from Bloomerang.
Cool. Thanks, Noah. And thanks for the really warm introduction. I love donor retention, so I'm always happy to jump on board and talk about it. I'll talk to one person. I just shout up at random strangers on the street about donor retention. So this is
I wouldn't doubt that. So don't walk around you're in Indianapolis, right?
Yeah, if you walk around Indianapolis, you'll probably see me shouting at you. So retain your donors. But yeah, I'm happy to do that. I love donor retention. You know, we at Bloomerang really pay attention to it, and I'm also involved with an organization that researches it from a scientific standpoint. So, Noah asked me to come on and talk about it. So I thought I'd kind of just give you the lay of the land first of what the donor retention situation looks like right now, and then share with you some other research that is kind of looking at the causes of it and maybe to give you some ideas of what you can do to maybe increase your retention rates. Thanks for having me, and thanks to all of you for hanging out all day. This is a really cool event. I'm just happy to be a part of it. So, like Noah said, I work at Bloomerang. I'm always talking about donor retention, come from a fundraising family. So I love this stuff, but, I'm not really going to be kind of a Bloomerang representative for the next half hour. So I really want to be more of an FEP, representative. So if you don't know FEP, stands for the Fundraising Effectiveness Project. And check them out. Check out their website later on. They are a really cool collaboration between the Association of Fundraising Professionals, AFP. Maybe some of you are a member of an AFP chapter or go to their events, and the Urban Institute. And I play a really small volunteer role at FEP. There are some super smart data scientists, career-long fundraisers who help make it happen. But what they do at FEP is they release a report every year, and now we actually do quarterly reports. So there's 5 reports a year that just show how we're doing at retaining donors here in the US and Canada. And what FEP does, which is really cool, we Bloomerang and a couple of the other leading donor management providers, so Neon and Donor Perfect being, I think, the most standout ones. We actually all collaborate, even though we're competitors. We get along and we help out FEP by sending them our anonymous customer data. And since FEP has been crunching all these numbers, that data set has grown to something like $9 billion in annual transactions. So it's a pretty significant data study that's done. But FEP takes all that data from us, and they crunch the numbers, and they release a report that shows how we're doing at retaining donors. And this is the current state of retention now here in the US. This is the 2018 report, which looks at the 2017 calendar year. So in a couple months, we will have the 2019 report, which looks at the 2018 calendar year. So it's about a year behind, just because of the data set's so big. But I got permission to preview some of the 2019 numbers, which I'll show you. But this is where we're at right now. We're at a 45.5% retention rate. So we lose half of the people that gave to us last year who do not come back and give to us again this year. So pretty alarming number, right, to lose half of our donors every year. But one thing that FEP does, which I really appreciate, and I think there's a lot of takeaways from it, is we look at retention rates by specific donor frequencies, so specifically first-time donors and repeat donors. So the first-time donor retention rate is only 32%. So 2/3 of the donors who make their first gift to us, their only gift, never give a second time. To me, this is a really scary metric. I really want to focus on this one for the remainder of my time, because there can be a lot of lost ROI associated with that retention rate. So if you spend, maybe $20 in gift acquisition costs and marketing costs, overhead, whatever you want to call it, to acquire a donation that is less than $20. If you spend $20 to get a $10 donation, you've got negative ROI, right off the bat. And if you don't get a second gift from that person, which 2/3 of those people, according to this data, are not going to give again, you've kind of dug yourself a hole that you'll never be able to get out of. So getting that second gift, getting a repeat donation, getting a monthly commitment from donors, that's really how you improve your retention rates. And so much of the advice you've heard today and will hear is really geared towards what donors want from us in terms of what makes them give again, give a second time, give a monthly commitment. So the more you move people kind of to the right on the spectrum is where you see the retention rates increase. But that 45.5% rate kind of is like the 2% of GDP that fundraising represents, right? It never seems to budge from that 2%. And since FEP has been studying it since back in 2006, we haven't really seen a lot of changes in that overall average retention rate. It bottomed out at 39% as we were kind of coming out of the recession. And we kind of topped out at 46, 47% back in 2015, but doesn't change too much year to year. So even though we don't have the 2019 number just yet, I don't expect too big of an increase or a decrease. I do expect a decrease. That's what we think is going to happen at FEP. We think that maybe the 2018 calendar year was a little bit of a downturn. But the real reason I showed this slide is you can really stand out amongst maybe the nonprofits that you kind of compete with or that are in the same, operating space as you, either geographically or the industry you work in, because most organizations do not put a great focus on retention and stewardship and, communicating to the people who already support to us. We kind of get on this acquisition treadmill, and with good reason, right? If we're losing half of our donors every year, we need to refill that bucket. But think about what you can do, and I'll show you some ideas based on research of what you can do to kind of stem this tide and hang on to the people that have already been giving. One interesting thing that we're seeing at FEP in terms of those individual frequencies is that first-time donor retention is actually on the rise over the last 5 years. So we're kind of happy about that, right? It was 25% back in 2013. It's gotten up to 32% this last year, which is good, but still that's a low number, right? 32%, over 2/3 of those first-time donors never giving again. So one piece of advice right off the bat is focus on first-time donors, right? Are they getting specific communications from you that other donors are not getting? Are you welcoming them? Hey, thanks for your first gift. We're so excited for you to join the family here. We can't wait to tell you stories and more about what your gift is doing. Just that sheer act of segmenting your communications by first-time donors versus repeat donors can be really helpful in getting that second gift from folks. Where we're not seeing a lot of changes is that retention rate on the repeat donor side, kind of those low 40s, hasn't changed that much. But one thing we're really concerned about and where we expect more downturn to happen is on the recapture rate. So if you don't drink the Kool-Aid on this retention stuff and you think, well, if they miss a year, no big deal, they'll come back. Well, the data shows that if someone lapses, if they miss a year of giving or a year or two, it's really hard to get them back into the fold. Only 5% of lapsed donors ever come back after lapsing. So once they kind of leak out of that bucket, it's really hard to get them back in. So focus on the people you already have, right? Because they like you, that you've already gone through the trouble of acquiring them. You've already kind of gotten over that hump. Now, what are the things we can do to keep them in the fold is what I'll cover. But just a real quick preview on the 2019 data. We expect a little bit of a downturn. So if you had a bad 2018, just kind of looking back at your individual numbers, don't feel too bad. We think that is going to be a sector-wide issue that we're having. And there's a lot of ideas and hypothesis about, why this is happening. A lot of people are talking about, the tax law. I don't really want to get into that, but we do expect all of these numbers to go down the next time that we show these numbers. So keep on the eye out for that. Go to AFP FEP, sign up for the report. You'll get it in a couple months here. Should be the first week of April that comes out. So why is this happening? So Noah invited me on board here to talk about not just what the current state is, but why people think this is happening. And I don't personally have a lot of opinions on this. I think there's a lot of opinions out there, maybe too many. So I like to just look at the research. There's a lot of academic research out there that has looked into why people give, why people stop giving, and why people keep giving. What is it that loyal donors cite as the reasons for why they keep giving for 5 years, 10 years, or more to the same organizations? This one I really love because it comes from Adrian Sargent. He, to me, is like the godfather of donor retention. He is obsessed with donor retention. He's been studying it long before FEP was ever founded. If you see his name at a conference, go to his session. He will be very animated and maybe kind of yell at you about donor retention a little bit. He's a very nice man, but he gets animated. He loves it. Don't let him scare you because he's got really good advice. But he did this study back in 2001. And I know it's a little dated, it's going on 20 years or so, but every donor loyalty study that's been done since really hasn't found any different different information or maybe competing thoughts on this. Donors really give and stop giving for the same reasons that they did 200 years ago, and I think it'll be the same 200 years from now. But this study looked at why people specifically stop giving. So they had been giving to an organization, they stopped. What happened? What went wrong? What did the organization do or not do? So what Dr. Sargent did is he reached out to 10 really large nonprofits here in the States. So like household name nonprofits, super large, because they had a large list of lapsed donors, people that have been giving, but over the hundreds of years, in some cases for these organizations, they'd built up this list of people that had stopped giving. So we surveyed them, asking them, hey, what happened? What went wrong? Why did you stop giving? Did we make you mad? Did we tick you off? What happened? And these are the sort of aggregated and common answers combined for why those donors stop giving. And I'm going to show you a study after this one that kind of looks at the other side of the coin from this. So keep these things in mind as we go through them. And also keep in mind what here is controllable by us as fundraisers. What can we control? What can we not control pretty easily? So 5% of these lapsed donors said that they thought that the nonprofit no longer needed their support. So maybe the case for support was not clear, compelling. Maybe they simply stopped asking for money. The stories maybe didn't pull on the heartstrings, whatever those reasons are. They stopped giving because the donor felt like, well, they don't need my support, so I'm not going to give it anymore. 8%, and this is something we'll cover in a couple more slides, kind of an important thing. They wanted to know specifically how their donation was spent. And I'm not talking about like fund designations or, kind of strict uses of giving. I'm talking here about, are you telling donors the stories of what your organization is doing through your programs, through your services, to give the donor an idea of what their investment is doing out in the world, out in the community. You cannot tell too many stories to these donors about what their gift does out in the community. They love it. It's like one of the best things you can do. So update people on their donation. The organizations that we see that maybe use Bloomerang or that I know about that have really high retention rates, they do a lot of this type of storytelling. They're all the time keeping donors updated about all the great things that their donation is doing out in the community. 9% had no memory of supporting, which I always think is kind of weird whenever I show this slide. But when you look at the next one, 13% never got thanked. So that's probably why they didn't remember, because they never got thanked for the donation, perhaps. They never got a story of what the donation was used for. So thanking donors, it seems like a no-brainer, right? But the more you thank, the faster you thank donors. If you can thank personally, that really helps your retention rates. And if you can combine a nice thank you with maybe a story, you're going to be in good shape. So if you have like a minimum threshold for thanking donors, I've heard of organizations where the board doesn't let them thank a donation under like $20 or $10. Don't do that. The donation amount is not always, it's rarely a signal of interest. It's usually a signal of capacity, not interest, not engagement. Thank all of your donors, especially first-time donors, right? We saw those retention rates are super low. Going further into this study, things become less controllable, right? 16% of donors had passed away. A little over half said they could no longer afford. But a big chunk said, hey, the communications you sent us didn't make sense for who we are. We thought other organizations were more deserving. So if you're telling stories and if you're communicating to donors in a way that makes sense and if you're thanking them, I think you can really improve your retention rates by pretty significant percentage rates here. 10%, 20%, even a small change in retention can make a big difference. So I think it really comes down to, like I said, thanking, the impact stories, and kind of segmenting your communications in a way that makes sense. And I'll talk about that here in a second. My other study that I really like to go to, that I always kind of keep in my back pocket for when I talk about these things, looks at the other side of the coin. Why do donors keep giving for 5 years, 10 years, for maybe their entire adult lives? And this is a study that was done by the Donor Voice that sought to answer that question. If you've never heard of Donor Voice, check them out. Really cool research on their website. They do lots of free research studies. You can download them all. You can get a lot of good insights from them. But I really love this one because it speaks directly to Adrian Sargent's study that I just showed you that was, 10 years prior, completely different data set, but it's the exact other side of the coin for those reasons that were given. So what Donor Voice did is they reached out to loyal donors versus lapsed donors, what I just showed you. So 1,200 super loyal donors from about 250 nonprofits. So these donors, they are defined as loyal because they have been giving for multiple gifts in a year. They've given in the last 12 months. They have multiple gifts within one calendar year, a couple other signals there. Cream of the crop donors. And Donor Voice asked them, why do you keep giving? What are these 250 nonprofits doing well, either in spite of themselves or on purpose? It doesn't really matter, but what are they doing well to keep you into the fold? And these are the top 7 reasons that these loyal donors gave for why they keep giving. And to me, this is should be your North Star for retention. If you care about retention, do these 7 things, because they're not easy things to do. I'm not going to sit here and say that they're easy, but they are kind of simple, and they're definitely achievable by any organization, sitting here listening to this today. But they also exactly mirror Adrian Sargent's study, which I love. And you'll kind of see that as we go through them. Number 1, the nonprofit is effective, which all of you listening are probably effective organizations. You're doing what you say you do. If you're an animal shelter, you're sheltering animals and you're getting them adopted. And if you're a YMCA, you are having kids in, and you're having community members come in and hang out and play basketball, whatever it is. But you need to communicate that to the donor so that they perceive you to be effective. And again, that goes back to the storytelling. What is the outcomes of our programs and services? What is the output? What are the success stories? Who is the kid that went through our program and now he's the first kid in his family to graduate from college? And, it broke that chain of poverty. Telling those kinds of stories is the number one thing, because it shows the donor that you're an awesome organization, and also that the donor is a change agent, right? They're doing awesome things through their gift. So those stories, number 1. The rest of them really interesting. Number 2 is kind of a little bit of a standout. It's a little bit different than the others, but that the donor knows what to expect from your communications. So you're not sending anything that is, inappropriate or doesn't make sense for that recipient. You're not asking a major donor to give you $10 on Giving Tuesday. You're not asking a $10 Giving Tuesday donor to leave you a gift in their will when maybe they're like a 22-year-old. What you send makes sense for the recipient. 3, donors want to be thanked. Obviously, we saw that in the last study. You don't need me to tell you that. Donors want to be thanked, of course. But the faster you can thank a donor, so that timely word is the kind of the key word there. The speed of your gift acknowledgement has been shown to increase retention and engagement. So the faster you can thank a donor, the better. 48 hours if you can, that can be really helpful. 4, how many of you are surveying your donors regularly? Are you asking donors questions? How are we doing communicating to you? Are we thanking you the way you want to be thanked? Are we sending you the stories that make sense? Is it easy for you to donate? What did you think of our event? All those feedback questions, even if they do not answer your surveys, it still makes them feel good that you sent them a survey. So if you're not surveying donors, a lot of research that shows that's a really good thing to do. 5 is donor centricity, right? It's not enough that you are an important cause, but that the donor feels like they're part of that cause with you, right? They're not just this silent ATM off in the corner that's sending you $20 a year. They're right there in the fight with you. So through your storytelling and through your communications, are you putting the spotlight on the donor as the change agent? Noah, you're saving the dolphins. You, Stephen, you're saving the wetlands. Chris, you're putting these kids through college. Kind of taking that first person approach to your communications is really important. 6, appreciation. So there's 2 out of 7 here tied to the gift acknowledgement. And then 7, we talked about that a couple times already. Donors want to hear those stories. Who is being helped? Who is being aided through the donations? What is the outcome? What are the output of the organizations? Tell those stories, but make sure you're putting the spotlight on the donor as the person making things happen. A lot of people will tell stories, but it feels like it's just kind of rah for the organization, right? We're doing all these awesome things. And by the way, thanks for helping. You want to change that so that it's the actual donor. And, there is a danger of maybe donor worship and maybe going overboard with that, but make the donor feel like, hey, they're doing awesome things out there in the community. So segmentation, thanking donors, surveying donors, telling those stories, and being donor centric is really my advice for you. Segmenting, are you sending different communications to different donors? First time donors should be getting things that long-time donors are not getting. You want to be telling different stories, asking different questions. Monthly donors should be getting communications that no one else gets, because monthly donors are super special. They're awesome. You want to make sure that they feel really valued there. First-time donors, make sure you have a communication plan for them. So often what happens is someone makes their first donation and they just get thrown into whatever ongoing communication cadence is already in place. No, you want to set them aside and put them on their own little highway of communications that includes lots of thank yous, lots of storytelling, surveys. Tour invitations are awesome for first-time donors because you can get them on site, get them in person, get to know them in person, ask them questions, and they'll see your mission happen in real life. And you'll have a friend forever there. So have a communication plan. These are a couple that you can steal. This first one's from Lori Jacobwith. This is from Pamela Grow. Both awesome. Make sure you know what you're doing there. Thanking donors quickly. There's lots of research that shows that if you can thank donors, as fast as 24 to 48 hours, it improves retention, and it also improves their next gift size. Priming the pump with thank yous. If you're sending an appeal, I would maybe preview it with a thank you email or a thank you letter about a month before that appeal goes out. This is research from Jen Shang out of the UK. She did a test with this where she had an appeal that went out to 2 groups of donors. One group of donor got a thank you right before that appeal hit their inbox. And the group that got the thank you gave a lot more than the group who did not get the thank you before the appeal. Where we see differences in retention rates is not typically by demographics, but by channel. So we see lower retention rates on online gifts versus offline gifts. And my hypothesis on that is that we don't really treat online donors very well. We don't do a lot of the 7 things I shared you from that Donor Voice study for online donors. They typically get these very robotic and scary receipts. I know CauseVox does a really good job of this. The things that donors get from CauseVox are very warm. They look more like this, where it looks like an actual letter that, you could put in the mail. So, humanize your automation, go in and customize those automatic emails that go out and make them a little bit warmer. Tell a story, tell the donor that you're going to tell them stories in the future. Welcome kits for first-time donors. Hopefully you're doing that. Spend a lot of time on those first-time donors, because if you don't get that second gift, like I said at the beginning, you may have some negative ROI there. I love this piece, thanking the donor for their first gift. By the way, donors really like it when you tell them what kind of donor they are. Hey, Stephen, thanks for your first gift. Hey, Noah, thanks for becoming a monthly donor. Charity Water does such a good job of all this stuff. Hey, Stephen, you've been a loyal donor for years and years. We just want to thank you so much for that. Let them know that you are kind of paying attention to their giving habits, right? Rather than just treating everyone the same, calling everyone a donor and going about your business there. Telling stories. Charity Water does a great job of just keeping donors updated on their gifts. Surveying donors. Cannot stress enough, if you're not doing this, give it a try. Do it for first-time donors, if nothing else. You can do this in Bloomerang, but you can go out and get SurveyMonkey, Google Forms. You can do surveys pretty easily and quickly. Stick them in those first-time donor emails. Thanks for becoming a monthly donor. We'd love to learn more about you. Did we thank you appropriately? How have we treated you? What's your connection to the cause? Why are you passionate about clean water or the environment or whatever it is. Get to know those first-time donors. And lapsed donors, lastly, you're not going to get 100% retention. That's not the point of this. I'm not trying to get anyone to 100%. It'll never happen because some donors will only want to give once, no matter what you do. That'll be their preference. Some donors will move. Some donors will pass away. But invest in these data services. Invest in, cleaning your data, updating contact information. Send lapsed donors a survey. Hey, we miss you. Did we do something wrong? We'd love to have you back. Don't make them feel bad for not giving. Don't call them a lapsed donor. They may not actually be lapsed. They may just be giving on their own timeline. But don't write lapsed donors off. I see a lot of people saying, they haven't given in 2 years, 5 years. Let's take them off of the database. Let's get rid of them. Don't do that. At least do something proactive before you totally give up on them. So donor centricity, segmentation, thanking donors, telling those stories, and really getting that second gift as quickly as you can on the first-time donor retention side. So if you like this, I got lots of other retention resources on our website. If you want that new FEP data that's going to come out in a couple months, just drop me a line and I'll put you on the list. No sales emails, just purely the research there if you want it. So Noah, are you still there? Hopefully everyone heard that.
Yeah. Hey, Stephen, thank you so much for always digging in and just providing really clear, practical insights into this, and not just the data and the back, but also kind of how you can work yourself out of this.
I love it.
Our participants found that valuable. I know firsthand some of the things that you recommended as far as keeping donors connected is something that we saw at my nonprofit that we worked at, where just treating donors like humans and like them personally. It's simple, like tactical stuff, and it's stuff we love.
Yeah.
Like when we're shopping and we're like mad when it's like we get treated like spam,
right?
Or a big fish in like a little fish in a big sea.
Yeah.
The work, and we kind of like forget about it, right?
Right. We get a donation and we think we're done, but to me, I think that's when really the work starts, is making sure that a donor feels valued.
Absolutely. And one thing that we saw just personally is that like the sooner we could get like in that first 60 days, 90 days, again, help making sure donors give on their own time, but how do you cultivate that second gift? The first gift is kind of like permission to have a conversation with them.
That's right. That's right. Exactly.
Gift is like, okay, now we're connected with that. And you see that in the retention data. First-time donors versus second-time donors, repeat donors. There's an incredible difference in that. So getting them over that hump is a great opportunity.
You nailed it.
Some practical stuff. So thanks so much, Stephen. We're grateful for Bloomerang. Bloomerang was a partner on this summit with us. And so I'm grateful for your insights, but also your help making this first ever summit an incredible opportunity.
Yeah, this is awesome. This is hard work. So thanks to everyone at CauseFox for putting this together. This is really cool.
Well, Stephen, we appreciate the time. And for those asking, we will be sending out the recording and the notes. We actually have someone in the audience today taking detailed notes, and you're going to get that entire document so that